continued. I was invited to India to speak at universities and meet with trade unions to talk about the need for grassroots solidarity with Palestinians. During this time, I also had the dubious honour of being named a European hero by Time magazine, the same magazine that named George Bush Man of the Year. I decided to accept the award in order to use the night as a platform. I accepted it in the name of Miriam al-Shahi, my friend's mother who was killed in the massacre.
Being labelled a European hero for me was intensely humiliating, because I'm not, because I think there are millions of heroes or non-heroes, resilient human beings who grace the face of this planet who will never be honoured with such an award. I didn't see it as an honour coming from Time being labelled a hero, and I certainly don't see myself as one. I think that the whole label is counterproductive. It puts, I think, acts which are very basic and very necessary and very simple on sort of unattainable platforms for a lot of people. If it's deemed heroism, it seems almost subhuman. It doesn't seem normal. I felt that in accepting it on behalf of Miriam al-Shahi, Maha's mother, that because she was a friend, first of all, that I was honouring her life and her death, and her narrative that had been silenced in the Western media, in a very personal way. I also felt that she was emblematic, of so many deaths, of casual killings, of intended killings that go on an everyday basis in Palestine. The fact that she bled to death, the fact that I haven't read of her name outside of human rights reports in any international publication since her death. I felt that I was bringing a part of Janine with me that night, with her photo. That in the midst of, I think, a lot of sort of champagne and high living, that it was for me bringing a sobering reminder of why I was there, which was her death, her life, what she's left behind, Maha's pain.
While giving these talks, the invasion of Iraq started. Before travelling back to Palestine, I decided to go to Baghdad to be a witness on the ground, and spent the next 6 months working with Iraqi human rights groups. There are thousands of Palestinian refugees also living in Iraq. It was through working in these camps and listening to people's stories of exile that my own desire to return to Jenin was reinforced. But getting back into Palestine was not going to be easy. The Israelis had continued to target activists, killing Rachel Corrie and Tom Herndl, and were denying many activists entry to the occupied territories. I decided to try anyway, and managed to get back in through Jordan. A month later, Hanadi Jaradat, a 29-year-old lawyer from Jenin, blew herself up in a restaurant in Haifa, killing herself and 20 others. This was the second death from the Jaradat family that year. Hanadi's brother was shot through the head by Israeli commandos 4 months earlier. Reports were quickly coming in that Hanadi had never gotten over his death, and that this was one of the reasons that had provoked her to do it. Hanadi's family, hours after they had received news of the bombing, had to pack up their belongings and move everything out of their home in anticipation of Israeli soldiers coming to demolish it. I went to offer my condolences to her family and to stay with them as they waited for the bulldozers to arrive.
هم اليهود حرام اصولا يعاقبوا الاهل لانه فيش اقول لك واحد بيسخب ابنه. يعني انت متجوزه لو عندك ولد بقول لك بدي انطيك فلسطين واطخه بتقول له بديش فلسطين طخني قبل ما اطخه لانه فيش اغلى من الولد ولا بموت الواحد حتى يربي الولد ما بصدق ابنه الواحد وهو يكبر عشان يشوفه. يعني أنا ابني بكيت خاطب بدي أجوزه وبكيت بالأردن أعالج بأبوه جيت اتصلوا فيي وجيت بكيت جايب له أثاث للعرس ومستأجر له دار هون وكل شيء يعني بدي ابني ما بكاش عليه ولا شيء هيك طخوا
The tragedy of her family being left behind, of her mother that first night before she slipped into the rhetoric, of praising her as a hero, saying that more than nationalism, she traded all just to hold her again in her arms. And the tragedy, of the 20 people killed in Haifa. The one thing that became very clear to me after Hanadi's bombing was the lack of contextualization of these bombings. It's not the promises of how many of our virgins in heaven, that drives people to do it. I think it's desperation, and it's also a political act. The fact maybe that she was a woman and educated, and I've seen it or heard it described in on the outside as if she had her whole life ahead of her. She didn't really have her whole life ahead of her. She was beautiful and educated, and had already lost an 18-year-old brother who was killed in front of her. Had already witnessed things that would probably break the strongest of hearts and psyches in any other country. And what future did she have? She had a suffocating occupation. She had, another however many years to live, witnessing brutality, and violent death after violent death around her. Israelis hold the key, to their own liberation of fear in their back pocket. It's a very simple solution. It's an immediate end to the occupation. And that's something that I think, is distorted in the narrative. When it's referred to as a conflict or to a war, as if two equal sides, two equal partners are engaged in warfare. It's myth-making.
That night, Israeli soldiers arrived at 3 in the morning and bulldozed the Jaradat's family home. House demolitions are a form of collective punishment, illegal under international law. The Israeli army has demolished thousands of homes during the past 4 years. The Jaradat family were now left homeless.
الحمد لله رب العالمين. ربنا اللي خلقنا أكبر بينا هو اللي بسترنا، اللي ساتر هالدنيا كلها بسترنا.
ليش هي اختارت الشهادة مش إنها تكون في الحقوق؟ هي محامية وشاطرة.
هي لأنها اتحطمت من بعد ما استشهد فادي، لأنه إحنا 7 بنات عنا، وإحنا ما صدقنا هو يكبر فادي. وهي لما شافت فادي بهذا المشهد لما اغتالوها ما ضلش براسها، يعني هي اتحطمت، نفسيتها اتحطمت. صارت حياتها ومماتها وهذا كلياته ما تفرقش عندها إشي. يا سيدي إن شاء الله إنها بشهيدة ويتقبلها رب العالمين ويجعلها من الشافعين إنا.
مين بتحمل المسؤولية؟
بحملها لليهود لإسرائيل. هم السبب لأنهم ما بدهم يحلوا بين شعب فلسطين وبينهم. فهم اللي قتلوا أولادنا. شو لما الواحد بموت ابنه أو بموت أخوه شو ضل له حياة هو؟
الإسرائيليين بيقولوا في الغرب إنه الأهالي أنتوا بتودوا أولادكم إنهم يعملوا هيك شغلات، في منه هذا الحكي؟
لا. الواحد بحبش ابنه إنه يروح. فيش أغلى من الولد.
شكرا. نو.
A few days later, we went to visit Hanadi's sisters. Though devastated, they put on a brave face for us.
راح يضل حتى الطفل الصغير هذا اللي بتشوفيه هذا راح ينزل أخرى عملية استشهادية بالمستقبل، وإذا ضلت الانتفاضة والله راح أياتها طفل أياتها ولد صغير. هي أنت هسه قاعد بتشوف الأولاد الصغار قاعدين براجدوا، هسه بكرة لما يكبروا بتعلم من الأجيال هاي بصيروا أخرى الانتفاضة بتزيد أكثر، وإن شاء الله بنتحرر إن شاء الله.
حول المستقبل كيف بتشوفيه؟
ما بقول لك ان شاء الله انه بيكون لنا مستقبل احسن من هيك، وان شاء الله انهم اللي شفناه احنا اولادنا ما يشوفوه. وبتمنى يعني يكون مستقبل احسن من هيك. يعني انا بشوف اختي مثلا صاروا قبلهم عملوا شغلات كثير، بتمنى يعني فيش حدا بتتمنى اختها تعمل بين ايديها، بس بتمنى ان شاء الله انه يضلوا اولادهم لاهاليهم، وان شاء الله انه يكون مستقبل احسن من هيك لهم. وينتهي الاحتلال ان شاء الله، فيش حدا بيحب الاحتلال له. ان شاء الله انا حياه احسن بتضلها إلنا.
طيب في السنوات الاخيره صار في نساء بيعملن عمليات، شو شعورك لما بتسمعي في هذا الشيء؟
يعني نساءنا الحمد لله انهم قوياء، برضه حق الرجال في المجتمع هذا. بس يعني واحدة لما بتختار زي الرجل شكلها كانت تختار زي الرجل، حقها يعني في الانتفاضة زي الرجل. زنح
هاي الصورة
هاي تقريبا صار له سنتين، 27 أو 26.
The following day, curfew was reimposed. Under curfew, life grinds to a halt, with people kept prisoner in their own homes for fear of being shot if they venture out. The most basic aspects of life become impossibly difficult. Schools and universities are closed, and the market shuts down. Curfews sometimes drag out for weeks without respite, and Jenin becomes a ghost town.
لازم شد حال شوي، قلتلهم يلي بإيده مي مش مثل يلي بإيده نار.
Jenin is a captive population. With the possibility of reinvasion at any time, basic acts of existence become incredibly dangerous. People frequently risk their lives, even going out to buy food. On this occasion, Msamer, her daughter and I were walking home from the market when we had to seek refuge because of approaching tanks.
ما فيش شغل، فيش يعني الناس صارت عادي، الموت عندها عادي، ما فيش. احنا اللي حاملين دبابات رايحين عبر